Let's make some acid techno. Hi there, I'm Melvin from Optoproductions.com, and today I'm gonna show you a very affordable live setup. I'm using a classic techno pair, the 303 and a 606, and you can already get started with the setup for about $400 US. I'm using the RD6 from Behringer and also the TD3 MO. I've got some pedals connected, so I'm also gonna walk you through that. But the main point of this video is how to get started making music with a setup this small. So, if you're a beginner looking to get started with a DAW setup, stay tuned. Alright, let me talk you through my setup. I'm using the main mix output on the RD6, so the first thing I usually do is to set the gain staging. This is really important as you want enough headroom, especially when you're recording. So I usually solo the kick first, or turn down the levels. So I'll turn up the cutoff a bit on the TD3, and I'll keep the overdrive to about halfway. And now let me adjust the gain on my mixer. I want to sit just below 0 decibels, which equals to around minus 18 dBFS in your DAW. Okay, so now I adjust the levels of the other drums on the RD6. So compared to the level of the kick drum. Alright. If you've got a mixer, then I definitely recommend to use the individual outputs of the RD6, especially for the kick, the clap and the hi-hat, as you can then EQ them separately, and you can of course use synth effects on the mixer. But for now, let's keep it simple. Going to the pedals, I'm using a cheap JoJo analog delay, so connected straight to the RD6. Followed by the Blues Driver BD2 from Boss. Now, one thing you need to keep in mind with guitar pedals is that a guitar signal has a much higher output impedance and a lower voltage level than most synth outputs. So you need to attenuate the output level a whole lot, probably by around 20 decibels, because as you can hear, there's not much left of this RD6 signal. It's too distorted already, even if you turn down the gain all the way. So let's lower the output level. The only disadvantage of this method is that you will also decrease the signal to noise ratio, so you may encounter a noise or hum, especially with cheaper pedals. A way to get around this problem is to use a Reamp box. So I've got one right here. This is a DIY unit by DIY Recording Equipment, and this is basically just a transformer to match the impedance, and it also has an attenuator to adjust the level. So this will convert a line signal into a guitar signal. Okay, so let me connect that. I've got a TRS to XLR cable here. So this one plugs into here. And this one goes to the RD6. Okay, so now the signal should be nice and quiet, without too much noise. And if I want, I can reduce the level right here. So if I turn down the gain all the way, I'll adjust the level so it barely adds some overdrive. And then if I want, I can always add more right here. Of course, if I add too much, we'll still get noise. But yeah, that's always the case with analog electronics. I think I'll put it right there. On guitar pedals, the input is always on the right and the output on the left. So in this case, we've got an input gain and an output level. And I can use the output level to adjust for the gain difference. Because if you can hear, if I bypass the pedal, it's much louder. I've also got a tone control, so you can add more high end or reduce the high end. But yeah, one thing you do notice is that we lose a bit of low end. And this is often the case with the distortion pedals. But I can easily fix this with an EQ on my mixing console. So if we compare, if we mute the EQ and the pedal, and now add the pedal and the EQ. Yeah, that works. Now of course the clap has a lot more distortion, but I can just lower the level of the clap. So it sounds a bit more balanced. And yeah, if you really want a clean signal, you can also use a DI after the last pedal, or you can use an instrument input on your interface. But in my case, I think this works fine. But yeah, you just need to find that out for your situation. Okay, let's have a look at the TD3 output. I'm using two pedals, a compressor pedal, the Hypergravity from TC Electronic. And this is really a guitar compressor, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for synths, but it will add a nice snap to the sound. So we've got an attack, a sustain, which is like a threshold. And we've got an output level, a makeup gain basically. But this also distorts the compressor a little bit, so that's cool. But yeah, I'll set the sustain to the minimum value. I'll turn the attack up. And then adjust the output level. Okay, so now I'm clipping my preamp a little bit on the mixer. This obviously also gives some distortion, so let me turn down the gain. Okay, something like that. Not too much, a little bit. Yeah, so after that I've got a phaser pedal, the Bedstone from Electro Harmonics. Just to add some movement. And it also has a manual phase mode. So you can really emphasize certain frequencies. But I'll just keep it on auto with a tiny bit of feedback. Yeah, ideally I would also want to add one more effect, a reverb. And this is why mixers are really useful. Because if I use the Synths on a mixer, I can send both the RD6 and the TD3 to the same reverb pedal. And yeah, that's also the reason why I recommend using the separate outputs from the RD6, because you might not want to apply reverb on your kick all the time. Yeah, but again, I don't want to make things too complicated. So let's keep it like this, without the reverb. And oh yeah, by the way, for syncing both devices, I'm using MIDI right now. But you can also use the sync output. And you can even use a stereo cable to send not only clock signals, but also start-stop messages as well. So yeah, whatever works for you, just make sure to press back and next. And set the TD3 to MIDI. And make sure to set the pulses per quarter note to the same value on both devices. So 48 in this case, and the RD6 to internal clock. So when I press play, the other follows. Okay, now the only disadvantage of the TD3 is that you can't edit patterns on the fly. You can only edit a pattern in stop mode. So that's not really helpful in a live situation. That's why I recommend you prepare some patterns beforehand. On the RD6 you can of course edit patterns in real time. And you can also switch patterns of course in play mode. But one thing I like to do on the RD6 is to make one pattern, usually the first pattern, with only a kick drum. So if I clear this pattern, oh, I need to go to write mode of course, clear. And I add only a kick and an accent as well. So this is like my fail-safe pattern. So if I ever get lost, I can always go back right here. On the last pattern though, I like to make a pattern with only a snare drum on every step. And this is perfect for build-ups and breakdowns. So for example, if I'm going to a break and I go to play mode, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm in a break or build-up. Now go to pattern 1. I'm on a drop. Yeah, so usually I also add a pattern with just a closed hi-hat. I can do that real quick if I just copy this pattern. Go to write mode, function, copy, pattern 3 for example, paste, and then we just remove the open hi-hat. So yeah, that's a helpful tip to always have some backup patterns. So just a kick on pattern 1 and just a snare on pattern 16. Okay, so let's say you've prepared some patterns on the TD3. There's actually one thing we can change in real time, and we can add random patterns. I just press start, stop and clear at the same time. And it will generate a new pattern. It is a bit dangerous though, as you can end up with really funky patterns. But that's the fun of it. You never know what to expect. And the separate accent decay on the TD3 MO is also really useful, as you can really change the pattern with this. Okay, so the difficult part of live jamming is usually build-ups and drops. The RD6 doesn't have mute or solo buttons, and I only have 2 hands. And this is why I often like to use patterns, because as you can see, if I switch a pattern, it will only switch at the end of the previous pattern. So when I press a new pattern on the start of the current pattern, I've still got some time to move my hands over here to the cutoff or to a pedal. So for example, if I add some delay, now I select another pattern. You still need a lot of practice and a lot of preparation with the patterns, but that will definitely help. Alright, I hope this video gave you some insights on how to get started with a DAW-less setup. Don't wait until you have the perfect setup. You really need to get started now, as live jamming really takes up a lot of practice. If you'd like to learn more about hardware setups, I've got a Facebook group going more in depth about this topic. Okay, let me know if you have any questions and I'm gonna finish off this video with a nice little jam.